and we'll get this meeting started. Looks like we have Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Spiegelberg, and myself, so there's enough for quorum. And so we'll get this meeting rolling. This is the regular meeting for the March 10th, 2021 meeting. First order of business is usually the Pledge of Allegiance. Since we're on Zoom here, we'll go ahead and skip that. Let's see, will the secretary go ahead and call roll? David or Joe?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and call that. I started to, but I needed to unmute apparently. So, Mr. Hinckley. Absent. Mr. Spiegelberg.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy.
Here.
And Ms. Hanning. Absent. So Mr. Hinckley and Ms. Hanning did let us know, I believe, that they would not be able to make it today.
All right, thank you, David. Excuse absent members. The chair will entertain a motion to excuse absent members Hinckley and Hanning of the Planning and Zoning Commission from the meeting.
So moved.
Now we got a first for Mr. Kennedy and a
Second.
and a second for Mr. Spiegelberg. Let's see, I'll go ahead and call a roll for this. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Mr. Hinckley and Ms. Hanning have been excused from this meeting. I did have a little conversation with Ms. Hanning. She might be able to join the meeting later. But I told her that she'd be welcome to join, and we'd stop the meeting if she's able to make it. Motion carried. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda for the March 10th, 2021 meeting?
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Gertz, did we have an issue with the Osborne application?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have not received confirmation that they provided notice as required. So that one probably should be removed, and we'll try again next month. So.
Okay, thank you, David. Mr. Kennedy, would you want to amend that motion for the agenda?
Since there's no second, I will move to accept the agenda with the deletion of the Osborne zoning change application.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Spiegelberg. And I'll go ahead and take the roll here. Mr. Kennedy?
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. And so we've amended the agenda for today's meeting, removing item D from public application, the Osborne zoning change application. Approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes for the February 10th, 2021 meeting?
Kennedy, I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Spiegelberg. I'll go ahead and take roll on this. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Item number 6, disclosures. The chair calls for any disclosures to be known. Mr. Kennedy, do you have any disclosures with today's meeting?
I am a customer of VistaBeam, but I don't think that has any bearing, and I do not live in the area where the tower discussion is.
All right, thank you. I think that's just fine. Mr. Spiegelberg, any disclosures in today's meeting?
No disclosures.
And no disclosures from Mr. Spiegelberg. The discussion today will be conducted in accordance with the state statutes, the rules of the Planning and Zoning Commission and other applicable laws. I would ask individuals who address the commission to identify themselves and state their address for our minutes. So with that being said, we're going to roll into public applications. Public applications, the first item is Vista Beam tower permit. David, would you go ahead? David or Joe, whoever's going to present this, go right ahead.
Yeah, the applicant is Inventive Wireless LLC DBA VistaBeam. The location of the site is the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 26, Township 15, Range 77 West. The request is for a tower permit. Current zoning is agricultural, current use is residential, and there is existing access off of Stampede Drive. There were 7 reviews and no one had any concerns. Public notice has been provided, posted by sign, publication, and certified mail as required. The proposed tower shall not adversely affect the public interest. The applicant has provided the required site plans. The applicant has addressed the following impacts, visual impacts. The tower will be an impressive display of architecture. Environmental impacts. VistaBeam strives to leave the smallest environmental footprint possible. Co-location. The proposed tower will have purchase links licensed by the FCC to ensure that there is no other interference with any towers that may be in the area. Exterior lighting. There will be no lights on the tower to cause a glare that will interfere with traffic safety. It will not cause a nuisance at night. Screening and buffering is not required due to separation from any incompatible adjacent uses. General nuisances, the tower will not produce any noise, vibration, odors, fumes, smoke, or any other off-site nuisance. Air traffic safety, another benefit is that the tower is not tall enough to interfere with any air traffic safety or flight paths. Albany County, they did sign off on Albany County to have the right to install a communication antenna on the tower if requested. The applicant is proposing a 40-foot tower. The tower will meet the setbacks for the property lines and lease lines. Findings of fact, the findings necessary for approval as listed in this report are incorporated herein as findings of fact. The property is currently zoned agricultural. The applicant has provided a complete application. The applicant has submitted a statement allowing Albany County to install a communications antenna on the tower if needed. The applicant has noted that in the event the facility is no longer being used or abandoned, the owner will be responsible for removal of the facility. Documentation has been provided that ensures that density standards levels are not exceeded. The application has provided a copy of the construction plan certified by an engineer licensed in Wyoming. The foundation design must be submitted and approved by the county engineer prior to construction. Conclusions of law, the provisions of the Albany County Zoning Resolution, Chapter 5, Section 5, and Chapter 5, Section 9 have been met. Our staff analysis, the applicant has satisfactorily addressed all Albany County standards for tower permitting. The applicant will need to follow all further Albany County construction requirements as they proceed. Also this morning, we received word that the tower is already built. And so I contacted VistaBeam and it's partially built, and maybe Drew can expand further on that.
Yeah, I mean, we made a large mistake. Obviously, we started on the tower before we realized we needed a special building permit in Albany. Most of the other areas we work in, we haven't needed a permit. We actually kind of found out through some other applications that we put in. We were attempting to build towers at several of the fire stations, and one of them in particular was it was Mandel Lane. Anyway, what we stopped construction. We moved forward with the building permit. So we still have to go back and complete it. So I certainly apologize. It was not our intention to circumvent the process, and I sure understand if there's fines or things like that. We can't really go backwards at this point. So I apologize.
The recommendation is to approve the Union Wireless Tower Permit Application LUCT 0520 based on and incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Joe. Do you have any questions for the staff? Mr. Kennedy? None? Okay, Mr. Spiegelberg, go ahead.
Yes, I have just one brief comment. I do appreciate filling in from the contractor. I'm in full sympathy with him. We have gotten into these towers around the county, and there were two criteria we always wanted to make sure were met. One was the mile-an-hour wind speed. I think most of them are designed for 100-mile-an-hour wind. The other one is if the tower fails, it does not come down over a roadway. And we had a situation up north of town, and it's still sitting there, and they just kind of put it up, and that was all it amounted to. But some of the towers they're designing, if there is a possibility of the entire tower failing and going over and hitting the road, they've built a safety feature into the new designs, and the upper part of the tower fails but leaves the rest of the tower intact. Could you please elaborate on that for me, please?
We actually just that exact subject came up on another site. We were applying for a building permit. It was the Big Laramie Valley Volunteer Fire Department, Station 1, and we couldn't meet the setbacks on that lot. So we actually went back to the tower company. We had them, do an analysis of what would happen if the tower collapsed, and they claim, now that was a 127-foot tower, and they claim it's a self-supporting tower. So they claim that, in the event of a collapse, that it would break at about the 40-foot point and not completely collapse. I'm an old tower climber. I don't do it much anymore, but I've climbed and worked on and installed towers for years, and I've never seen a self-support style of tower just come over at the base. They typically do exactly what the engineer said. They kind of break in the middle up at the weakest point, because of course the base is huge and wide, huge in comparison to the top, and then it tapers to the top. Whereas the guide towers that have the guy wires coming down, when they collapse, the entire thing comes down in a kind of a crumpled mess. So I guess that's the answer to your question. However, this tower only being 40 foot tall, I don't have the prints in front of me. I don't know whether it was built to a 90-mile-an-hour standard or 110. I believe we usually build to the 110 standard, but I would say it's just about impossible that the likelihood that this would topple over at 40 foot tall. It was originally designed to be a 70-foot tall tower, and the landowner decided that was too unsightly, and it is now a 40-foot tower. So it's actually over-engineered for its height. It was designed to be quite a bit taller. So.
Are you saying then that the 40-foot tower is set back far enough so if it ever did collapse, it still would not come into contact with the road?
Yes, it's nowhere near any of the roads. It's back up in kind of the corner of the property. It's not even close to the driveway. So yeah, it's so far back from any roadways. Yeah, it would just come down in the open pasture.
Towers we approved north of town up in the Rock River country, this issue came up, and it was kind of touch and go whether it would hit the roadway or not. And the engineers came back and said that it's like the upper 20 feet or 30 feet or something like that. The tower was built with a weak point in it, so if it did fail, it would only be that upper. So I think we're in sync, and thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the staff? I see none for Mr. Kennedy. Any additional questions for staff? None? Okay. Mr. Kennedy, any questions for Mr. Wicker?
None, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think you answered John's questions appropriately, and I don't have any as well. At this time, we'll go ahead and open up the application for anybody from the public who wants to comment on the Vista Beam Tower. And so if anybody wishing to speak would raise their hand, and I'll go ahead and call on you from here. And so I'll give a couple seconds here for any hands to go up. Not seeing any. We'll go ahead and take a vote here.
Do you want to close public comment, Mr. Chairman?
Pardon me.
Do you want to close public comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And so public comment's closed here. Not seeing anybody who wanted to speak on that. All right, do we have a motion to either approve, deny, or table this application?
Kennedy, I move to approve Inventive Wireless LLC Tower Permit Application LUCT-05-20 based upon and incorporating the findings, fact, and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Do we have a second?
I would second.
All right, so we've got a motion, we got a first and a second. We'll go ahead and take a vote here. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
and Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Motion carries. And Mr. Wicker, you're on your way to the Board of County Commissioners for your permit. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to application B, which is the Johnson zoning change application. David or Joe, would you guys like to go ahead and inform us on that?
Yeah, so the applicant is Maureen Johnson. Location is 17 Dog Iron Lane, which is approximately in the southeast quarter of Section 30, Township 17 North, Range 74 West. The request is for a change in zoning from agricultural to rural residential. The current use is residential. One dwelling unit currently exists. The property can be accessed off of Dog Iron Lane or Two Rivers Road. And the applicant is requesting a zoning change from agricultural to rural residential. There were 2 reviews that came back and neither of them had any concerns. Notice has been provided by posted sign, publication, and certified mailing as required. The applicant has provided the required site plans. The proposed zoning change generally follows the suggestion of the comprehensive plan and the long-range growth plan. Priority growth area 4 is what this is considered. And it's also can be considered, well, it's close enough to priority growth area 3 that I took that into consideration as well. The applicant has addressed the following impacts for compatibility with surrounding properties. She said, in changing the property from agricultural to rural residential classification, there is not much difference between the usage of the property other than the addition of one small additional dwelling, so it will not affect the classification of the zoning properties around it. Screening and buffering does not apply. Consistent patterns of development. They are wanting to add a 399 square foot mother-in-law cabin to the property. No major development. Economic impact, it will have none. Natural environment, resources, and impacts, they said that there will not be any. Our response to that is wastewater will need to be dealt with according to the Albany County wastewater regulations. There will be no cultural impact. This dwelling will also not have an impact on traffic or automotive pedestrian safety. And no public facilities will be impacted. Power will be obtained through carbon power and light water will be from a well, and a septic tank will be installed. The findings of fact, the findings necessary for approval as listed in this report are incorporated herein as findings of fact. The property is currently zoned agricultural. The applicant wants to add a second dwelling unit on their property, which will require approval of a conditional use application, approval of a zoning certificate application, and small wastewater treatment facility application. The applicant has provided a complete application and has addressed the potential impacts this use may cause. Conclusions of law, the applicant is proceeding in accordance with the requirements of the Albany County zoning resolution. Our analysis, this property is in priority growth area 4 and has many similarities to priority growth area 3. Impact to the surrounding area will be minimal. The applicant has provided information that ensures that the impacts and nuisances will be minimum. The applicant will need to follow the Albany County wastewater regulations for a septic system. Our recommendation is to approve the Johnson Land Use Change Application LUC 0121 based upon and incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions from commissioners with this application? Mr. Kennedy? See you shaking your head no. Fine with that. Mr. Spiegelberg?
No concerns?
No concerns, and no concerns from Mr. Spiegelberg, and no concerns for myself. I think it's very self-explanatory. At this time, would the applicant or applicant's representative wish to address the commission?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Johnson, the applicant at 17 Dog Iron Lane. This will be a very minimal impact, and we are not looking to add any other dwellings to this property, just a very small 399 square foot structure for my mother-in-law to come join us on the property. But we will make sure we follow all the regulations and guidelines and make sure we're doing it properly.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any commissioners have any questions for Ms. Johnson? None for Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Spiegelberg?
None?
None for myself. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. At this time, I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. If anybody wishing to comment on this from the public, here's your opportunity. I'll open it up. And like I said before, raise your hand and we'll go ahead and call on you. I'll give a few minutes here, a few seconds here for people to raise their hand. Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Commissioners, what is your pleasure? We can either approve it, deny it, or table it.
Mr. Chairman, Keith Kennedy, I would move to approve the Johnson Land Use Change Application LUC-01-21 based upon and incorporating the findings, fact, and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second from Commissioner Spiegelberg. I'll go ahead and call a roll here. Mr. Kennedy?
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore, myself, aye. Motion carries. It looks like we're not totally complete with this because we're going to move on to public applications C, which is the Johnson conditional use application. Being that we just heard everything from the staff, is there anything staff would like to include based off the conditional use part of this application?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, they look identical to me, so I think that it would be prudent of us to move forward with this. I think it'd probably be appropriate to go through the opening up for public comment again. Being that we didn't have any last time, I'll give a few seconds here for anybody who wishes to comment on this conditional use permit. I'll go ahead and close the public comment period of this application. Again, commissioners, I'm looking for a motion to either approve, deny, or table this application.
Kennedy here. I move to approve the Johnson conditional use application CU-01-21 based upon and incorporating the findings of fact and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Spiegelberg. I'll go ahead and call roll on this. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
and Commissioner Moore, myself, aye. Motion passes. Ms. Johnson, congratulations. Your applications will move forward to the Board of County Commissioners. Good luck.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. With that application, we're going to move on, being completed with all the applications we have, we're going to move on to current planning projects. Current planning projects, the first one is the proposed amendments to the zoning resolution, which are special standards for permits within the plat of Centennial. Mr. Gertz or Joe, do you guys have any, which one would you like to address this?
I'll go ahead and address that.
All right,
So what this is during a Board of County Commissioners meeting, there was a lot of discussion about properties in the Centennial area. There was a lot of structures that have been built in the county right of way, not really county right of way, but public right of way. And just some problems with getting buildings built on property in this area. So we were directed to come up with some regulations to address that. And at this point, this is a draft. I did talk with the Jennifer Curran and Peggy Trent this afternoon, and we do want to make some more changes to this, just to add a little bit of add a purpose statement and just beef it up a little bit before we move forward. But I would like to hear if there's any comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission at this point that they would like to, provide staff. So as we continue with drafting these, this section, what you'd like to see, or if there's anything you'd like to add. So like I said, we don't want to go forward today, but if you do have any comments, please, we would request those.
Mr. Chairman, this is Keith Kennedy. I've got a question and then a comment. David, what sort of area, what is the size of the area? How many acres are we talking about here, probably?
Acres. I'm not sure exactly how big the Centennial, it's basically the Centennial survey plat. I'm not quite sure. I don't even know if I could guess on that.
So it's basic.
Mr. Gertz, I think it's a quarter section. The original plat is quarter section.
Okay.
So that would be 160 acres.
Yeah, and that'd be my comment. I think that this regulation should be specific with regards to the legal, what quarter section of which section and township and range, so that it's perfectly clear to an applicant whether they need to conduct a survey or not.
Okay.
That's my only comment.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Spiegelberg, do you have any comments?
No comment.
No comment from Mr. Spiegelberg. And I think at this point, until we see what you're going to throw in front of us, I really don't have any comment. So at next month's meeting, Mr. Gertz, you'll have some amended verbiage in there for the special standards for Centennial. Is that correct?
Yeah, we should be able to have that for you next week.
Okay. Well, very good. Mr. Kenny, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, not on this.
Okay, very good. I think if that's the case, then we're not going to do anything with this current planning project at this moment. So we'll refrain from any public comment at this point. We'll wait till we actually see in writing what happens with the actual regulation. Unless Ms. Kern, you want to add something.
You're muted, Jennifer.
I don't have anything to add, just that when Peg and I were talking to David earlier, we thought it would be appropriate to add kind of a wherefore clause. The reason that we're putting this provision on that Centennial plat because of all of the problems that have gone on out there. So that was our initial suggestion. And I agree with Mr. Kennedy adding specific language, either with regard to that legal description or specific recording information or both, so that it can be easily identified as to what we're talking about is a good idea.
And Jennifer, I've got another question. If we have something that's moving forward, how much notice do we need to give before we send it on to the commissioners?
I don't think you have to give any notice.
Okay.
I think you can suggest it and then the commissioners can put it out for rule change like we did with APOZ.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Curran. Let's see. So we'll move on from current planning projects. We'll move on to item B, which is the APOZ Telephone Canyon letter and discussion. Joe or David, do you guys want to go ahead and address this for us?
Yeah, so I believe this came up in discussion last meeting. If we wanted to do something or look at this letter, or I'm not sure exactly what direction we were going with this. I just put it on the agenda so that we could discuss it because I think that's what was asked of us. So I'll let you guys take the lead on it. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gertsch. Mr. Spiegelberg wishes to address the commission. Mr. Spiegelberg, go ahead.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Kennedy for drafting this preliminary letter. And it's pretty much fits the original letter we sent quite some time ago. But I am still very concerned that that canyon situation is a ticking time bomb. It could happen any minute and destroy 50% of the Laramie's drinking water. And it wouldn't necessarily take a 10,000 gallon petroleum spill. It could be a pickup load of toxic chemicals that absolutely are lethal to humans. So I just want to address that. I think one spill would be catastrophic of petroleum, but the likelihood of many tankers colliding up there and spilling it's a very real probability. And therefore, I would like to incorporate the language that in the first paragraph some way that the telephone canyon I-80 risk is absolutely paramount. To me, I can't think of anything that's a greater danger 24/7 to 50% of Laramie's drinking water. My other suggestion in talking with various people, I think it would be very wise to forward this letter right to DEQ. They are the ones that are looking over these constant threats. And so I think they should be involved in this, just to send a letter to some authority that really doesn't have the wherewithal to really get something done up there is kind of, to me, kind of futile. Although I do like to see it to go to as many influential people involved in this. But I would like to see, number one, that this is a paramount risk. It's, to me, it's absolutely above and beyond any risk in that whole area. And I think, but really believe that this should also should involve the DEQ and see if we can get them moving on this thing. This thing has been sitting there and sitting there and sitting there, and it's just a matter of time before we have a catastrophic wreck up there. And one spill is too many of petroleum, but you could get a pickup load, just a pickup load of toxic chemical up there that's deadly to humans. And that would not only be catastrophic to our water, it might immediately kill a lot of people. So I don't want to diminish the risk of petroleum or any of these chemical spill risk up in the canyon. They're very, very, very dangerous potential. And so those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Spiegelberg. Mr. Kennedy?
I agree with Mr. Spiegelberg, and I actually have some names and addresses for some folks. And I think that rather than the director of the Department of Transportation, the Transportation Commission secretary at that same address is who we should send the letter to, along with Kevin Frederick, who's the water quality administrator at DEQ. And I'd also suggest that we forward a copy of this to the Joint Transportation Committee. They're going to be considering interim topics here within the next couple of weeks. And I think this is something that at least ought to be on their radar so that they're aware of our concern with that. And if we finish this up, I'd be happy to present this to them.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Spiegelberg has something else to add?
I think those are excellent suggestions, Mr. Kennedy. Also, I got to wondering if we could, I think it might be wise to send the county commissioners as well as the city of Laramie copies of these letters to get everybody on the same page and get this thing on the radar. This thing is a ticking time bomb. And I think it's very, very important. And I'm really pleased to know that Mr. Kennedy knows who to contact over there. Maybe get this ball rolling once and for all. It's just been setting too long. I know it takes money, but that's another issue. But I think we really need to get the ball rolling on this thing and prevent a horrible catastrophe that cannot be reversed.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. Mr. Gertsch?
I would just comment that this is the exact letter that we sent out previously. And it did go to a number of different places. It went to, it did go to DEQ, or at least the director there. And then it went to a number of other people. I think we sent it to our representatives at the state legislature, and I think it did go to the county commissioners. So, I mean, if we want to redo that, we can add Mr. Spiegelberg's comments in that first paragraph about the risk being paramount, and then we can add anything else that we would want to add, and then if Mr. Kennedy has a list of even higher ups to send it to, that would be great, and we can do that. So if we go ahead and approve this, I'll go ahead and do that work for you. So
Thank you, Mr. Gertz. Mr. Spiegelberg has another item. that-
Yeah, I do have one thought just crossed my mind for expediency. This would hopefully get over to somebody there in the legislature before the next 2 weeks, and I guess is a matter of timeliness. If we redo this letter, which we obviously I think is going to be done, could each of us try to get in to the planning office as if we agree or don't agree and sign off on this letter and get it moving as soon as possible? Because if we wait till the next meeting of the APOZ, that's too long in my book.
All right. So, go ahead, Mr. Gertz.
What we could do is, I mean, if we want to have each of you sign it, that's great. Or as a board, you guys can make a motion and then the chairman can just send it and it comes from the board, which I think would be easier when it comes to just getting signatures. And I'm not sure how the other two planning and zoning commissioners feel about it, or if they'd even sign it or not. So anyways, that's a thought. So consensus rules here. So whatever you'd like to do.
I think that I appreciate your thought on that, Dave. I think it would, if we take a vote and have a majority to proceed with this letter, I would think that it would be legal to have our chairman sign it on behalf of the board. Now, there may be other people on the commission that may not want to go along with that. I can't speak for them, but I really believe time is of the essence on this thing, and I think it would be most proper for our chairman to sign it. I have even wondered about, would it be smart to even put this thing in the local paper?
Any thoughts, Mr. Gertz?
I believe we did run it as an opinion in the letter of the editor section last time we did this. So, I mean, we can do that again. It's not a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Gertz.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What are
Mr.
your
Spiegelberg.
thoughts? You're the
Oh,
chairman.
my thoughts. Let's see. So my thoughts on it are, I think it's just fine. I think being proactive on this is a good idea. I think at some point, I think that if the opportunity ever arises, I think it would be good to have, if we could, have the head of the state DEQ, come to one of our meetings if we can. And it'd be good just to get their opinion on their thoughts of the Casper Aquifer Protection, the Telephone Canyon, the Aquifer Protection Overlay, and those types of things, and what they're thinking at the state. But as far as this is concerned, I think this is just fine, and I think being proactive is a good thing, and I think that's part of our job here as members of the Planning and Zoning Commission are to look at these types of issues. So I think everything that Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Spiegelberg said is just fine by me. So with that being said, I think we have to have a motion. Do we have a motion to approve this letter and have Mr. Gertz have this letter so we can sign it and send it on?
I would so move.
And so we have a motion by Mr. Spiegelberg. Mr. Kennedy?
Second.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call roll here. Mr. Kennedy?
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg?
Aye.
And Chairman Moore, myself, aye. So, Mr. Gertz, if you would you, redraft this letter and work with Chairman or Commissioner Kennedy on the people that we need to send it out to, and let us know. And I think it would be good to have it signed and let us know when it's ready to go out and to be sent.
Sounds good.
All righty, very good.
David,
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
David, I'll email you a list with addresses here when we're done with the meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. That will wrap up current planning projects. Other items and announcements. The next meeting of this board will be April 14th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Do we have any comments from Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Spiegelberg?
Will this be by Zoom?
Yes, it will be by Zoom. We'll conduct the April 14th meeting by Zoom at 2 p.m.
I do have a comment and an agenda item, and this isn't for you, David. This is for Jennifer. Could you review the state Supreme Court decision on asphalt specialties v. Laramie County Planning Commission and let us know if there are any changes that we need to make either to our zoning ordinance or zoning regulation or to any of our procedures or what we consider at the next meeting?
I will do that. I have read it, but I didn't read it with that eye, so I will go back and do it again, and I will let you know.
Very good.
Mr. Kennedy, is this the decision about that had to do with the gravel pit and they were trying to apply zoning when they were only had a plan in that area? Is that correct?
Right. And I play like I'm an attorney, but I'm not one here when I'm at the legislature.
Me either, so.
But the issue was that they were using the comprehensive plan and strictly the opinion almost reads like you cannot consider the comprehensive plan as it's guidance, but it isn't something that you can base a decision on. And there may be some other things that are happening over here that will have some bearing on that too.
Chairman Moore.
Yes, Ms. Kern.
If I could, I was going to say, I agree with Commissioner Kennedy. That was initially my reading too. In Laramie County, where this gravel pit, if I remember it correctly, it was an area that was unzoned. And so that's why there were issues there, but I will go back and reread it again just to be sure.
Thank you. It sounds good. Ms. Kennedy, anything else you want to add?
Well, thanks.
All right, very good. With that being said, as far as the next meeting is concerned, April 14th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Spiegelberg, any comments?
None.
None from Mr. Kennedy. Okay. We'll move on to citizen comments. If there's anybody from the public that has any comments that were non-agenda related, please raise your hand and I'll go ahead and call on you. Looks like we have a comment from Brett Wadsworth. Mr. Wadsworth, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. Thanks for the opportunity. I am Brett Wadsworth. I live at 25 Staghorn Road up in the Vedaboo area. Obviously commenting on an off-subject item, and it's something you've heard a lot about, but it's probably not the subject that you've heard the last about. So I'll just start with that. I just want to throw out a few comments about the ConnectGen wind farm. Certainly this proposal comes with a number of pros and cons. Some of the pros are the suggested infusion of money through taxes, economic activity, and some jobs. Certainly it would probably enhance the property value of the landowner in the area. Some of the cons are the risks to the wildlife, risk to the way of life of residents, risk to the priority growth area, risk to tourism, and the high risk of loss of property values for the neighbors up there who live in and around the area. To me, that is extremely important because that is a property right issue. And somehow that just does not feel right if this was to proceed. Also, I'm not speaking for the larger fire district itself. I'm a volunteer fireman in Vidaboo, and there are physical risks associated with facilities such as this. The National Fire Protective Association NFPA Code 850, which I encourage anybody who's going to be involved in the approval process on this to look at, addresses things that they recommend should be considered during the planning and construction process of a facility like this. And I encourage everyone to read that. It mentions specifically a fire protection design basis document that needs to be created early on by qualified non-interested professionals as this thing moves forward. And then, of course, also should energy storage and batteries later be added. These come with other risks. There was one that recently exploded down in the Arizona area after a fire, and those things are not currently addressed in regulations up here. In any case, I encourage everyone involved in this, and I respect what you guys have to go through, but I encourage all factors to be considered, the pros and the cons, as this thing moves forward. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Wadsworth, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Ms. White.
All right. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So my name is Mariah White. I live in Tice Siding, and I just wanted to thank you for your time today. I realize that you're volunteers and want to make sure that I acknowledge your service to our county. Also, I thank you in advance for listening to me. As Mr. Wadsworth just addressed, I realize that wind regulations are not on your agenda today, but I had to speak to you due to the urgency of my situation. If regulations are not updated to protect my family and I, then we will be robbed of our home and the use of our land without compensation. Not only will my family and many others be forced to move, but the county's resources like water are in jeopardy due to the lack of regulations. Commissioner Spiegelberg, you were very concerned about the cost per aquifer, and I am too. If approximately 8 million gallons of water is taken from artesian wells that are connected to the cost per aquifer, how will that affect Laramie's drinking water, especially if the county isn't compensated for the use of that water? I am not asking you to ban the wind industry from the county. I am not asking you to stop the rail tie project. I am asking for my family's safety and equality with people living in Rock River or Laramie. If I was to choose only one regulation that was to be updated, I would ask for a 1 mile setback from non-participating landowners' property line. This would actually solve the problem in my particular case. I would be able to probably live in my house still after this project goes in. I counted, based on ConnectGen's current map, that 68 parcels property lines are less than 1 mile from a proposed turbine. Of these, 31 have residences on them. So there are 31 residences which right now are threatened by lack of equality of protection compared to the residences in a municipality. So there are 30 more families' homes that are threatened like mine. Commissioners Gozer and Ibarra made it clear during their last meeting that they did not feel that the current wind regulations protect Albany County citizens, even with the changes adopted from the P&Z last December. Even as unorthodox as it may be, I am begging you to recommend to the commissioners one or both of the following actions. First, recommend a 1 mile setback from non-participating landowners' property lines. Second, recommend a wind industry 3-month moratorium so that other regulations can be well thought out without fear that a wind company will take advantage of the time that it takes for government to work within state statutes. Those are the only two things. I could just beg you for doing these two things and help me to save my family's home. But there are many other issues, just like Brett just addressed, that need to be considered. Water usage, blasting, lithium battery storage, and fire suppression. Please, this is extremely time sensitive. It will not protect us if this is put off longer than today. You have the power to recommend, so please help us. I am asking you to protect my family and the 30 others that could easily be forced to abandon their homes. Please feel free to ask me questions. I will do my best to answer.
Well, thank you, Ms. White. Do we have any comments or questions for Ms. White from the commission?
My only comment would be that we worked quite diligently on the wind turbine regulations, and then they were sent on to the county commissioners. And I recall one of the commissioners particularly said that she was torn, thought more needed to be done. But I don't know. I think we have been involved in this thing throughout the whole process, and we sent it on in good faith to the county commissioners. There's a lot of issues, and but that's the way it is right now. But I don't know what more we are supposed to do. We have worked diligently and reviewed all these things and tried to make them compatible with state regulations to the best of our abilities and so forth. And whatever the commissioners want to do, I guess that's up to them as far as re-examining this. But we have worked diligently on this stuff for meeting after meeting. So that's all I can comment on. And I think the rest of the commission members here today would agree with me. We have worked diligently and tried to the best of our ability, but we can only do what is what the law permits.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelberg. Mr. Kennedy?
I don't have anything to add to what John just said. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Ms. White.
Mr. Chair.
May I comment again?
Is this Ms. White?
Yes, may I comment again?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly you can have you comment. I mean, we're not at this point, we're not going to get into a debate about anything, but go ahead and make your comment and we'll listen.
I just wanted to ask for equality, and that was not given to us with the recommendations that were created before. And that was stated to the commissioners, to both Commissioner Gozer and Commissioner Ibarra both said that they fell short. That's all I'm asking.
Well, thank you, Ms. White. If they fall short, then they'll send them back to us and we'll review them again. And that's just how this process works. So we thank you for your comment. And is there any other comments from the public at this point?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this isn't the public, but so I would let those on the line that are interested in this project know that we did receive an application and check this week, so for the rail tie project. So if you are interested in seeing the application, it is online. If you go to the planning office website under projects, you can see the complete application. So, I mean, I feel like I just need to let everybody know that it's out there, so.
Thank you, Mr. Gertz. Appreciate you letting us know that. At this point, I'm looking for, seeing no other public comment. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn this meeting of the Albany County Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second from Mr. Spiegelberg. I'll go ahead and take the roll. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Mr. Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Chairman Moore, myself, aye. Meeting's adjourned. We'll see everybody next month. Take care.
So.